Throughout your business analyst career, you're going to be dealing with a lot of different software developers on different projects and on other support initiatives that you might be working on. And they're probably the group of people that you're going to be interacting with the most or the second most throughout your entire career. And because of that, it's really important for you to understand how developers think about things, and more importantly, what it is that developers actually need out of business analysts. If you really think about it, they're probably one of the most important stakeholder groups that you have throughout your career, and understanding how your stakeholders think and trying to predict the type of things that your stakeholders are going to want from you is going to help you to become a much better analyst. Okay. Now, to help us get some advice, what I did is I went on a forum and I asked a very simple question. Okay. The question that I asked here is, developers, what are some of the things that you wish that business analysts knew or did to make your job easier? Okay. And really what that question is meant to do is to get the developers to give us some insights into what it is that they want from us. Now, I have quite a bit of my own input on that from just my own career experience, and I'll be sharing that in future episodes. But I wanted to start this off by hearing from developers themselves exactly what it is that they want business analysts to do and do better. So getting it straight from the developers themselves is probably the best place for us to start. And again, I'll share some of my own experiences in either through our podcast or through our community channel here. The follow-up there was really that business analysts and developers often work very closely with one another on projects. What are some of the things that BAs could do to make the development process go more smoothly? Okay, so we got a couple of answers. And let's dive right into the very first answer that we got from one of the developers here. So this developer wants the business analyst to know the requirements inside out. Okay, this is a common problem where if you have an analyst who is spread across way too many other projects, let's say, for example, you're an analyst working on 2, 3, 4 different projects, your time is going to be so thinly spread that it's going to be difficult for you to answer a developer's questions right off the bat. Anytime they ask a question, a lot of times they want an answer right away because they have a problem to solve and they can't move forward until you solve that problem. Some of the questions that they ask are actually blocking them from getting what they need. And depending on the question, they're not going to be able to afford to wait a day or 2 days to get answers to that question. Their expectation a lot of times, especially on large projects, is for you to have an immediate answer. And if you don't have an immediate answer off the top of your head, you should be able to provide them with some sort of an answer within 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes by going back, making a phone call to your business stakeholder, to your customer, or actually diving into the detailed specifications that you've written to figure out whether the answer is in there or not. Okay, so these are just some of the challenges that you experience as an analyst on a day-to-day basis. And so the input that we're getting from this developer here is that they want to make sure that they're not blocked in doing their work, right? And to do that, they have to make sure that you understand the requirements completely inside out. Okay. Again, in many cases, it's not realistic, and so you might have to negotiate with the developer a little bit. Once you build a working relationship with the development team that you're working with, then their expectations will adjust. But in an ideal world, from this developer's point of view, this is what we would be able to do to make their lives a lot easier. And this developer continues on saying that know who to contact when the requirements conflict. Now, conflicting requirements are a result of inadequate analysis work. Okay, so when you get your requirements from a customer, there is a certain amount of things that you have to do with those requirements. A certain amount of analysis has to happen after you've gotten those requirements to make sure that you validated it, and especially make sure that one requirement does not conflict with another. And without doing that type of analysis, a lot of times, if you don't put in the work, you'll let the developer know, hey, here's one requirement, here's another requirement, and you won't hear about the conflicting requirements until the developers actually started to build the product. And at that point in time, trying to scramble to get answers and trying to figure out, well, which requirement are we not going to satisfy, that starts to become a bit of a nightmare for an analyst. So you got to make sure you're putting up the upfront work to resolve a lot of the conflicts and to flesh out the solution for the developer as deeply as possible before handing things over or before making sure that they start their build. Know how to resolve that conflict without me, and know when to contact me for clarification. That's very important. So if you're an analyst who's just trying to get their bearings, initially you're going to need a lot of support. And your instinct might be to have the developer tag along with every little meeting that you have to get that development support in. And so what this developer here is telling us is that they really don't want to be involved in any of your work unless it's absolutely necessary. Okay, and so this person's saying, I don't need to be in every little meeting. I have another job to do. You can contact me. I'm open. I'll provide you with the help that you need to get to the answers that you need. But make sure you understand where that line is and when the appropriate times are to reach out to a developer versus being able to handle something on your own. And again, as a beginner, you're going to be needing a little bit more support. But as you start to get into an intermediate or a senior analyst role, you have to really understand what developers need. You have to be able to predict what they need and how they're going to respond so that you can completely keep them out of the conversation until it is absolutely necessary. Okay? And be prepared to put decisions in writing. Now, is something that can be an organizational problem in some organizations. Okay, when somebody asks you to put something in writing, what they're essentially telling you is that I need you to make a formal decision on paper for me to be able to carry on with this, because if your decision does not work out in the future, I don't want the blame in some organizations to be put on me. And so what a lot of developers will do, and rightfully so, this is really in most organizations, it's actually the standard way of doing work. And so if a developer says, please put it in writing, it's not something that you take offense to. It's not that they don't trust you, but they have enough experience and knowledge in that organization to know how things work. And like I said, in many organizations, that's just standard process. And so the expectation always is that if you tell a developer something, they're going to want it in writing so that they have the legitimate word, the legitimate decision from you, the analyst, and from your customer, that the decision that has been made with respect to the requirements or a specification or anything else is something that they have been formally instructed to do. Okay, so this is the input from one of the developers. And again, hearing things like this from a developer gives us a lot of insight into what it is that they need. And the whole purpose of this is for you to build better relationships with the developers that you have on your team by understanding their perspective. All right. So I'll leave this one here, but we have a lot of other input that's been given to us. And I'm going to be going through step by step and explaining to you exactly why the developers are asking for some of the things that they're asking for in some of the other responses that we see. One of the responses actually talked very specifically about user stories, and they talk about Agile and what Agile can and cannot do for you, right? And so we'll get into all of that in the other responses, and I'll be reaching out to more developers, some of the personal developers that I've worked with in the past. I'll be reaching out to some of them to get some of their input on it, and then I'll be telling you my own point of view on my own experiences, so that you have as many different examples of how things work in the real world with a major stakeholder group like the development team to get a leg up for your own skill set and your own ability to perform. Okay, so again, I'll leave this one here and I will see you on the next one.